Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 24th of July 2025. These are the stories that we will be highlighting in the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the ruling by the ICJ as far as the climate change is concerned. Now, the International Court of Justice says countries must address the urgent and existential threat of climate change. But the whole world seems to be divided when it comes to climate change. There are big countries that do not want to support the ICJ and its decisions, or even the United Nations and its decisions as far as climate change is concerned. There are countries that have removed themselves from the Paris Agreement, and there are others that continue to exploit this to their advantage. There are others who are being exploited and are under the whole ambit of vulnerable and susceptible countries like Pakistan. This is what we are going to discuss, the impact of this ruling and how that can be implemented. Although it is not really implementable, it is more of or less a ruling, but you cannot forcibly implement it on different countries. It is up to the countries to do the needful. Whether they will do it is the question we will be asking in this segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the Pakistan-Afghan trade agreement, or the early harvest program that has been signed between both the countries to reduce tariffs on 8 agricultural items for 1 year. This lays the foundation for a broader preferential trade agreement between both the countries. Under the current challenges that Pakistan has vis-a-vis Afghanistan, how lucrative or important will this deal be is what we will discuss in our second story. Our third story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the latest situation as far as Gaza is concerned. More and more people are dying of starvation. More than 113 people have died of starvation so far, and a small majority of that is children. Journalists themselves are also reeling under the pressure. There is combined statement that has come from Reuters, AFP, AP, that is Associated Press, and the BBC, that calls for concern for the journalists in Gaza and the dire circumstances that they are facing. To add to their misery is the brutalities that the Israelis continue to date and even right now as we speak. This is going to be our third story. Our fourth story concerns the Indian electoral system, ladies and gentlemen, that is in danger. Credibility of the electoral system is having a lot of question marks ahead of the state elections under the Modi rule, because there is a new NRC that is imposed in Bihar without legislation completing preparations for systematic electoral fraud. This and more will be discussed as part of our fourth story. Our last story of the concerns the Columbia University. We all remember the Columbia University and the Harvard University, and how the Trump administration had imposed fines on them and had restricted the flow of aid or the stipends to these universities. Now, Columbia has agreed to pay $200 million in settlement with the Trump administration, of course in exchange for reversal of the decisions that were taken against the university by the Trump administration. Will other universities follow suit? It will be our question. Let's begin with our first segment, and that concerns the ICJ's ruling on climate change. But before we go into the details, let's watch the following report.
The International Court of Justice, in a historic ruling, has cleared the way for countries to sue one another over climate change, including for historic emissions. While the ruling is non-binding, legal experts say it sets the stage for a seismic shift in international climate law. Small island nations battered by rising seas and extreme weather have long demanded action. Frustrated by global inaction, they found hope in a case originally dreamed up by young Pacific Island law students in 2019. Now, the court has recognized climate change as an urgent and existential threat and pointed to the responsibility of states to act. Campaigners see this as a long overdue stepping stone to hold major polluters accountable, including for emissions from decades past. For developing nations, the decision signals that the era of unchecked environmental harm without consequence may finally be ending.
Dr. Ejaz Ahmed, who is a leading environmentalist, joins us in the studio. We've also been joined by Sarmad, Iqbal, who's an environmental journalist, and he joins us online. Thank you very much to both of my guests. We'll begin with Dr. Ejaz Saab. Dr. Ejaz, this advisory opinion, I'll again say this is an advisory opinion because a lot of people think that when the ICJ takes out an opinion that it is implementable. It is not implementable, it is just in an advisory capacity. This opinion, how does this empower the vulnerable nations, and there are so many including our own, to sue the wealthier countries for historic emissions and climate related damages?
Well, I think it's in a right direction in a sense that it provides opportunities to those countries which are although vulnerable but did not have that kind of voice. So this is a sort of a voice that they actually gather from ICJ's decision. Now they can actually like sue at any forum, although there are certain other mechanisms where there are bindings on the different parties under different conventions. For example, Biodiversity Convention, UNFCCC, and few others. Paris Agreement is another one. Similarly, the NDCs, which are sort of like a commitment by the government of a particular country to reduce the footprint, to reduce the greenhouse gases, that actually will be a document which any country can maybe review for the other country through this mechanism. Although the particular clauses and particular has options are still need to be developed, but I think it is something encouraging for the developed countries.
It is very encouraging, but the fact is I wish it could be implementable to push to the level of a push, so that this could really pave the way for true actions on climate change. Why is the why, in your point of view, is the International Court of Justice ruling considered a landmark victory for frontline climate-related or climate-affected countries like, say, Vanuatu or the Marshall Islands?
Well, I think because there was no voice of these countries, even different political groups were not supporting to that extent. Although there were some G70 group was supporting them, and there were few other supports available. But ultimately, they are at high risk countries. Any document that you see, they say that this year the sea level rise was like about 4 centimeter or something like that, which is almost like close to 1.5 inch. So that basically relates to the vulnerability to that particular country. Vanuatu, similarly Fiji, or small island. These even Maldives, we know that they are at the risk of sea level rise. So I think that is a big support that they will hopefully will be in a position to get something out of it. But the most important thing which I feel is the mechanism or protocols, how we can determine that this emission or this kind of disaster is because of some of the practices that some other country has done. So that is still has, there has to be some research required, and ultimately maybe some mechanism, DNA kind of assessment of those hazards which are happening in those countries. Who is responsible? Although we know that if we talk about Pakistan, we know during the winter the wind movement actually is in such a pattern that it comes from India and enters into Pakistan.
Of course.
And that actually is also one of the reason of smog. Although we have
but there are other reasons as well for smog, but the fact is this climate
but that
change
is one reason as
that
well.
is true. And of course what
so
we are
in that
also
kind of
seeing,
situation, I think this decision will help in a sense that we can talk to them,
at least we can refer to this decision to the countries that are basic emitters. Sarmad Iqbal, environmental lawyer, who I've just been told is now is online. Sarmad, I'd like to understand. The ICJ judges say that there are potential challenges in proving which countries are responsible for specific climate events. Why is it so difficult to prove, and what are those challenges?
Thank you very much, Umar, for having me. Apologies, I couldn't join you in the news studio. However, one of the pertinent questions that applies to this whole discourse of climate litigation is the acceptance of climate impacts on humans as a human rights issue. Now, we've been speaking considerably at various forums and the courts as well with regards to how the legal implications are binding on member states. Now, coming to the point about uh, what are the specific challenges that we see emanating from this is one of the fact that the states have to consider human rights obligations being impacted by climate events as a violation of basic human rights. Now, having said that, polluters, emitters, and those who are suffering, they can't be put into one basket when it comes to actually weighing the impact or weighing the probabilities of benefits and the losses that are incurred. So, having said that, the challenge would be with regards to its execution. How the polluter countries would respond to the claims of the impacted countries when it comes to talking about the financial articulation of the loss and damage that the countries have suffered, the weather pattern change related impacts that on all the countries across the world, especially Pakistan is seeing right now with huge volumes of rainfall or rain um, being dropped on the ground and the havoc that it is creating in the shape of urban flooding, rural flooding, or
So many events that are happening in Pakistan, Sarmad, and the fact is that most of this owes to climate change, and until and unless there is not a united or collective response to that, this will continue, not only impacting Pakistan but other countries. We'll continue this discussion, but we have to go to a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We're discussing climate change in the context of the latest ruling that has been brought forward by the International Court of Justice. Sarmad, how could this opinion by the ICJ reshape the legal landscape for climate litigation globally, especially in the jurisdiction that is outside that of the ICJ?
uh, you know, it's been 3,000. It's like 3,000 cases have so far, or litigations have been conducted so far under the ICJ for holding accountable various governments and corporations. Now, all these cases have been in play. They've been in the court. There's been a huge discourse around the positive, the negatives, behaviors, and actions. However, I would say this ruling is, although non-binding, but sets a clear pattern of implementation guidelines for the UN when it comes to the conversation, actions, the decisions being taken on how and who of the loss and damage that has been in the discourse for quite some time.
We'll come back to this discussion after this short break. Welcome back. Now, Pakistan and Afghanistan have signed an early harvest program to reduce tariffs on 8 important agricultural items for 1 year, and this is going to lay the foundation for a larger preferential trade agreement between the two countries. This, of course, comes into effect from the 1st of August, that is just in a couple of days, and will remain in force for a period of 1 year and is renewable. What are the impacts of this on both Pakistan and Afghanistan, and of course under the current situation, how important is it for both the countries to move in this direction? We've been joined by Zahir Sherazi, Senior Analyst. Zahir, thank you very much to have joined us. What is the significance of this early harvest program that has been signed by both the countries?
Thank you very much, Omar. I think this was much expected. Like about in 2014, there was a negotiation between Pakistan and Afghanistan for this early harvest program. And obviously, during the tenure of former President Ashraf Ghani, he had linked it to allowing the Indian goods and trade directly to Afghanistan for Wagah border. And that was the reason this was abandoned at that time. But now it's a very important agreement between Pakistan and Afghanistan. It would be helping out to increase the trade activities, trade volume between the two countries. Obviously, we have seen there is a almost like more than almost 38% increase in the trade volume in the last 1 year comparatively to 2024. Obviously, import from Afghanistan have also been increased by almost like more than 25 billion. And this is a huge potential. Obviously, this is a kind of an agreement which will help facilitate to cut down the prices of especially these four items like pomegranate, grapes, and other items which are being imported from Afghanistan, including even tomato. From Pakistani side, we would be exporting quinoas, bananas, and such like other things, which would be helping out to reduce prices as well as increase Pakistan's potential. This is obviously a first step, but I think the next step is likely that Pakistan and Afghanistan should go for a free trade agreement, allow the exchange of goods between the two countries because of this turmoil for the last almost 3-4 decades, war on both sides, then this anarchy in Afghanistan. So we are expecting that after these trade agreements and the Chamber of Commerce delegations exchange, it will be helping out to increase the trade volume. After that, we are expecting that the Afghan transit trade, which was had been abandoned on the Pakistani border because of a number of reasons, because of the Iranian and Indian involvement on the Chabahar side, development of the Chabahar port, opening up Bandar Abbas port, most of the Afghan transit trade has shifted to that side. So perhaps both of these governments will also be negotiating that to restart the Afghan transit trade and on both in Balochistan as well as to Chaman border and Pakistan's Torkham border. But Umar, I think overall this trade and economic activities are apart, goodwill gestures are apart, but Pakistan has only one point, that is the law and order situation, that is the militant groups which are operating from Afghan soil and creating law and order situation for Pakistan. Perhaps this is the on top of the agenda, and we have heard that this issue was taken up during the UAP trade agreement by Deputy Prime Minister Sagdar during Mohsin Naqvi's, the Interior Minister's visit to Afghanistan. He has also taken up a number of these issues, especially the TTP, which is a constant threat. Now, TTP is also expanding and penetrating its tentacles in all over the world. You might have heard. I will give you a very important story that they've also started engaging militant groups in Bangladesh, and a number of Bangladeshi militants, they have joined TTP, and some of them was also killed.
And the fact is that under the current situation, maybe this trade agreement will also lead to a broader consensus on important issues like counterterrorism cooperation, as you have talked about our Minister for Interior visiting Afghanistan recently, and of course the impact of that could be much better under the current circumstances when this agreement has been launched between the two and would lead to a better preferential trade agreement. Let's start a step at a time, and let's hope that these steps lead us to the right direction. Thank you very much, Zahir Sherazi sahab, to have joined us. That was, of course, senior analyst Zahir Sherazi talking to us about the Afghan-Pakistan trade agreement that has been inked, and of course this will lead to a larger preferential trade agreement. Next is Palestine, where more and more Palestinians are dying of starvation. This adds to the recent statement that has been taken out by Reuters, Associated Press, AFP and the BBC News, which talk about the concern for their journalists in Gaza that are not able to feed for themselves and their families. You know, if journalists cannot feed for themselves and their families, the children cannot feed for themselves, the women cannot. More and more children are dying of hunger and malnutrition with every passing hour and every passing day. And 59,219 at least people have died in the current conflict as we speak. The urgency of a ceasefire becomes even more imminent, becomes more important, and the fact that is more and more pressure needs to be inked on Israel and its allies in order for this to happen at the earliest, because if that does not happen, then as so many aid agencies, more than 100 agencies have talked about the current situation of starvation and humanitarian lack of humanitarian aid in the state, is going to lead to a catastrophe like none other in the last century. Next is the Indian electoral system that is apparently in danger. The credibility of this is being questioned because of the Modi government enforcing a new NRC in Bihar. We all know the elections are going to be held in Bihar in a couple of months' time without legislation that completes preparations, of course, for a systematic electoral fraud. Last story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the Columbia University. Now, we all remember what happened to that and how the Trump administration reacted to that, and of course the anti-Semitism and the student protests that happened there, and how the Trump administration did not like that at all and imposed certain restrictions on that and other universities. Now, Columbia University has now agreed to pay $200 million in settlement with the Trump administration, and this has been welcomed by Donald Trump. He says that of course the settlement of the investigations brought by the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity and the Commission, Employment Opportunity Commission for $21 million, and all the other thorny points that had been raised by the Trump administration are now being settled by the Columbia University. So for the university, it's a step in the right direction as per their statement, and let's see whether other issues will also follow. So with this, we come to an end of today's news. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow. News story segments that pertain to us, you in Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.